Welcome to sequel number 55. In this particular sequel, we continue with the behind the scenes plots that are taking place in London that will culminate, or that later on culminated into the elimination of Mwanga II, who was far away in the Seychelles by the British. However, this is happening. It's a cover-up. Apolo Kaggwa is in London, apparently at the invitation of the British government to attend the coronation of King George V. And as we shall see, it's a real visit. He's visiting places, as we're going to see today. He was visiting places. But at the end of the day, there is a secret meeting. Whereas as Apolo Kaggwa visits all over London and elsewhere, all that is recorded in Ham Mukasa's book, but the meeting with the British authorities is not revealed. So how do I get to find about this? The National Archives now have released these secrets. In fact, they were released long ago, just after 40 years. So now they are in the open, they're in the public domain. It's a matter of you to look at the correspondence, to dig it up, and you are then able to get the story, to build up a story. And this is what I've found. On the 15th of June, Apolo Kaggwa visited St. Paul's Cathedral, and I'm talking about 1902. He's already in London. He visited St. Paul's Cathedral, where they had an opportunity to listen to a very big pipeswick organ, whose sound, according to him, was like thunder. They saw a procession of the clergy, preceded by a male-only choir. That was quite interesting to them. On the 17th of June, they visited the leaders of the Church Missionary Society, and they had a meeting in the missionary house where Bishop Alfred Tucker, who was in London at that time, was waiting to receive them, together with the Reverend George Baskerville, the retired Archdeacon of he had not yet retired, and of course Dr. Albert Cook, who was also in London at that time. Now, Bishop Tucker appreciated Apolo Kaggwa for the great support he rendered to the growth of the Church of Uganda in an official capacity, now being in London. Bishop Tucker and his wife Hannah Josephine escorted Apolo Kaggwa back to their hotel, and Apolo Kaggwa was therefore able to meet for the first time the wife of Bishop Alfred Tucker, Madame Hannah Josephine Mama Murabirizi. Now, on the 3rd of July, 1902, the two gentlemen, Apolo Kaggwa and Ham Mukasa, visited factories in Birmingham, which employed women. This made Apolo Kaggwa wonder about the strength of these women. Anyway, they sailed on from Birmingham to Liverpool City, where they stayed in the Northwest Hotel. After Liverpool, they left for Cambridge, where they found the Reverend John Roscoe on holiday, waiting for them at the train station to take them to Boo Hotel, where they were to stay. On the 8th of July, 1902, they left Cambridge and went with Reverend Ernest Miller to visit Bishop Hanlon of the Roman Catholic Mill Hill Station, the Bishop of Nsambia. He was also in England on holiday, and he was able to receive them at Carriage. On the 9th of July, Apolo Kaggwa and Ham Mukasa attended the grand wedding of the Reverend Baskerville, and actually Apolo Kaggwa signed the marriage register as a witness. Then on the 10th of July, they left Hampstead and went to Calais to an agriculture show. Then on the 11th of July, 1902, they visited Glasgow, a city in Scotland. Now that is northern Britain. They paid a courtesy call on the city Lord Mayor on the 14th of July, and they went to see how coal was mined. They entered a lift, an underground lift, which took them to 1,000 yards underneath the surface in the mine pit, where they were exposed to the actual mining of coal. They also visited a place where railway carriages wheels were manufactured. The tour exposed them to more technology, showing them that Glasgow was a prominent shipbuilding city. On the 17th of July, they went to Newcastle, where the military cannons were made. Now, being soldiers, Mukasa was a soldier, Apolo Kaggwa was a soldier, they were very interested in this particular industry or factory. They themselves tried out a few guns they saw there without any hesitation, and they even fired some of the automatic ones before, of course, returning to London on the 19th of July 1902. Now, so much for the tour, which I've already said was a cover-up. The real thing was what you are now going to hear. And how did I find out on this one? The archives now are in public domain, and I'm talking about the archives at Kew in Surrey, not Uganda anymore. These are now British archives, Surrey at Kew. Now, they say that Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Arthur Balfour, who had only been in power briefly following the resignation of the previous Prime Minister, met Apolo Kaggwa, and he was together with the Colonial Secretary, Honorable Joseph Chamberlain. And the translator was the Protectorate officer who left Uganda with Apolo Kaggwa, Prendergast. So Prendergast was there to do the translation between the Colonial Secretary, the Prime Minister, and Apolo Kaggwa. Now, Apolo Kaggwa told Chamberlain about the demonstration in Kisumu and the fact that the bulk of the people of Buganda would always regard Mwanga II as their Kabaka for as long as he lived. The Prime Minister Balfour wanted to find out the reason for the letter he had got from Reverend Mullins, who had warned him that as long as Mwanga was alive, there will never be peace in Buganda. Now, this had made the British to begin to plot elimination of Mwanga. And that's the reason why Apolo Kaggwa was in London, and he was now meeting the very top of the British government. Now, Apolo Kaggwa was told by the Colonial Secretary that Yakobo Musajja Alumbwa, Anderea Chiwanuka, and Reverend Bartolomeo Zimbe had reached the Seychelles, and that they had met the island's administrator, Ernest Beckham Sweet Escort, to whom they delivered a special envelope which had been given to them by Uganda's Special Commissioner of Great Britain, Harry Johnson, who, however, at that time was in London, although he was not at this particular meeting. Now, they had been allowed to visit the prisoner, Mwanga II. Now, this is now British Prime Minister, British Colonial Secretary, and the British Colonial Secretary telling Apolo Kaggwa in London what had already transpired. Remember, Apolo Kaggwa and this group had separated in Mombasa. So Apolo Kaggwa was not in the know, but now is being briefed by the very top in Britain, according to the documents in the archives. Now, they also told him that the visitors found Mwanga with a baby girl, a new baby born by his wife Salima. The priest had asked to baptize the prisoner, and of course the Prime Minister was talking about Bartolomeo Zimbe, and that the Kabaka had accepted, and that the Kabaka had been baptized the name Daniel. Now, that was not true. As much as the Kabaka had not accepted to be baptized, first of all. This is what we discovered earlier in the earlier sequels. The second thing, it was a forced baptism, for which, when he realized it is forced, he then said Bartolomeo should not baptize him, but they should go and look for a native of Seychelles to baptize him if he had to be baptized. And remember, they went and they found an English priest, and the English priest, we even don't know which church he belonged to. Those details are not written, and is the one who came and baptized Mwanga. So the facts there were distorted what the Prime Minister was telling Apolo Kaggwa was not factually true, according to the documents in the archives, which I have seen. And when I say which I have seen, I didn't go to London yesterday. I was in London, I think, in 2011. So this is almost more than 10 years ago. Yeah. I was at the archives more than 10 years ago. It's not like I'm saying things which happened yesterday. And so the distortion there, they are not being very truthful to Apolo Kaggwa as they meet him and tell him the story about the baptism of Mwanga. They have distorted. Now, then the Prime Minister told Apolo Kaggwa that the Sultan of Zanzibar, Hamoud bin Mohammed, had died the previous day. Yeah. And that his son, who was in London, had returned immediately because he was the heir apparent. But of course, remember, the ships could take up to 3 weeks to reach. And so, fine, he had to leave, but it's not like today that you take a flight and in a few hours you are wherever you want to go. So Apolo Kaggwa was, of course, very disturbed about all that news. He wasn't aware of the death of the Sultan of Zanzibar. Now, the Colonial Secretary then told Apolo Kaggwa that he too was to visit Seychelles and that he was to take a sealed envelope. And when they say a sealed envelope, there is a way sealed envelope in those days were made. Even today, within the judiciary, they keep that tradition. The seal is an actual seal. A letter is sealed in such a way that you can't open it. The seal is physical. It's not our usual glue or sellotape. It was sealed so that if you tamper with the sealing, somebody would know you tampered with the envelope. So he was given a sealed envelope, which they told him he was to deliver personally to the Seychelles Island administrator, Ernest Beckingham Sweet Escort, in his capital, Victoria, on Mahé Islands of the Seychelles Islands. He was also assured that the British Consul General in Zanzibar, his name was Charles Elliot, would be his host when he arrives in Zanzibar, and not the new Sultan. So he was not to talk to the Sultan about the Zanzibar visit, about what was transpiring. It was supposed to be kept secret. Now, after the Mwanga business and the envelope were finished, they then addressed Apolo Kaggwa about the promised land of Israel. Now, that bewildered Apolo Kaggwa very much. The Colonial Secretary Chamberlain told Apolo Kaggwa, of course, the Prime Minister was looking on, that the Africa Order in Council law, which was the governing law in all the African British sphere colonies, was going to be amended, and that under the amendment, the Eastern Province of Uganda Protectorate, which included Rudolph, Usingishu, Plateau, Mumias, Kipsigis, and Nyanza, would be lost to become part of the British East Africa Protectorate, or Kenya. And the whole purpose was to give that particular area to become the new state of Israel, where Jews will come from everywhere in the world and migrate to the area. In conclusion, Chamberlain told Apolo Kaggwa that he would himself make a personal visit in December of that very year to inspect that part of Uganda which was now going to be taken away to become a Jewish state as well. Now, it was time for Apolo Kaggwa to surprise them. He told them that the area they were describing was not Buganda, and therefore briefing him about the creation of the state of Israel being taken away from Uganda or from Buganda was not true. Okay, we realized the other day that the influence of Buganda went as far as Kavirondo, and there was a chief there in charge, appointed by the Kabaka. But okay, maybe that far. But now when they start talking about Maasai Land, Kipsigis, Rudorov, those were places very far. And Mwanga, of course, Apolo Kaggwa did not have that geography, but he was clever enough to tell them that the area they had described was not Buganda. Therefore, his kingdom of Buganda seems not to have, would not be affected in any way by the creation of the state of Israel. Therefore, the great Lukiko would have no problem with what goes on as far as the creation of the state of Israel was concerned. He also told them that as far as he was concerned, the agreement they had signed with Great Britain must be superior to any law they make. This was Apolo Kaggwa speaking through his translator, Pradagaso. So Chamberlain told Apolo that his reasoning had been taken care of and that the British Parliament was definitely going to amend the Africa Order in Council. And he told him that what they were going to create in that very year was a law called the 1902 Uganda Order in Council. Yeah, so that is what will now separate that area, and Uganda loses it, and then they will be able to govern Uganda using contract law, the agreements, blah, 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 blah. The meeting ended, and a few people were very confused. For example, Apolo Kaggwa was confused how a world Chamberlain could have thought that what we call Eastern Kenya today was actually part of Buganda, which was not. Now, that confused Apolo Kaggwa a lot. And of course, now Chamberlain now had decided to make a trip. He decided to make a trip to find out for himself. So today's sequel has laid the background of exactly what is happening. These people are in London. They are visiting places, but now look, there is an undercover meeting between Apolo Kaggwa and the very top of the British authorities. So tomorrow, we shall find out more about what happened in this undercover plot to eliminate Mwanga, and the fact that Apolo Kaggwa was in London for exactly that plot. Tomorrow, the sequel continues. May the good Lord bless us all.